This podcast was brought to you by Meros cryptocurrency. Meros is a cryptocurrency payment system that does what cryptocurrency originally intended to do. Be a practical and secure form of direct payment, Meros utilises the best of current technology in a powerful new way. It introduces a groundbreaking consensus mechanism called merit caching. This enables Meros to be both feeless and instant while maintaining the same level of integrity of traditional networks like Bitcoin. To find out how you can participate in the future of crypto payments, go to meroscrypto.io now.
Hello and welcome to State of the Project Meros with me, your host, Cryptosi, and I am joined, as usual, by the enigmatic Kayaba. Now, in this podcast, we discuss all the things that are happening with the development of Meros, both inside the code and outside the code, but mostly as we're still in the early development stages and the network is not live. This is pretty much all code. So, without any further ado, because I've got plenty of questions to go through, I'd like to introduce my guest, Kayaba. Kayaba, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I'm happy to be here as always, and I'm excited to talk to you today.
Awesome. I've got a load of questions for you. First question is chain reorgs. Now, as me and you have had a little bit less than our usual amount of communication over the past month or so, but when I have spoken to you, you have been pretty excited about Meros chain reorgs. How are they coming along, and what are they?
So chain reorganizations, which is what chain reorgs is short for, means if we have a blockchain with 5 blocks on it, then we detect a different blockchain with 10 blocks on it. And by different, I mean not just the fact that one has a length of 5 and one has a length of 10, but you can't just add the last 5 blocks to the current blockchain. They have a split point. So at like block 3 or block 4, there's 2 different blocks. Chain reorganizations means we can successfully detect there's a longer chain, we can revert back to the block it split at, and we can sync what is the longer chain. So the reason this is important is for security and stability, but I want to focus on the security first. This has been around for years, since Bitcoin. And the longer chain represents the chain with the most hash power, with the most computing power. And now technically it isn't the longer chain, as in this one has a length of 5, this one has a length of 10. There is a bit more math in there, but it's not really relevant for the question. So whichever chain is the longest, it has the most hash power. And because it has the most hash power, it takes the most computing power to overthrow and is therefore the most secure. And beyond that, it's also a way of resolving forks. If 2 miners find a block at the same time, the network's going to split. Half of them are going to be on one block, half of them are going to be on the other block. Now, the advantage, what chain reorgs enable is reconciliation. Even if the nodes are disagreeing about what the most recent block is, they will come to consensus about what the block is.
Are you satisfied with chain reorgs and the work you've done on them? Do you feel like you've got it to a stage where it's not going to have to be worked on again before launch?
No, there's definitely some work to do here and there, but I am happy with the fact that we do have functional chain reorganizations, which is a great starting point for Meros.
Okay, right, Kayaba. So my next question is, there's an issue which remains outstanding, issue number 152. I'll put a link to it in the description. And the issue says that chain reorganizations wipe out several signatures. Is this a big problem? Is it something that will exist when Meros reaches mainnet, or is it something that you're hoping to have changed or is already fixed and just hasn't been updated on GitHub? What's the situation with issue 152?
Right. So 152 is about chain reorganizations deleting data from the chain. When we revert the chain from, say, block 10 to block 5, we lose those last 5 blocks of data. And now some of it is preservable. Some of it is going to be valid on both chains, and we don't need to get rid of it. But other data, say signatures, those signatures are part of the block. We use BLS signatures. which means if we have hundreds of signatures, we get to combine them into a single signature for both speed and space savings. It's something I'm actually really happy to have in Meros. But we can't easily split them back up. So because of that, if you get rid of blocks 5 through 10, so you can reorg to a different chain, you're going to lose some signatures. And that's what the bug is describing. It's describing that we lose some data, which is considered important. So the bug is discussing how we can not lose that data. So we obviously want to keep verification data. And what we're discussing is keeping every signature for the last 5 or 6 blocks, if I recall correctly. And even though we already have the combined signature, so if a reorganization does happen, we can reproduce those signatures. So we're just really discussing if a reorg happens, how do we minimize any damages? And we should be able to minimize all of the damages in the long run.
Okay.
So it's something we have yet to work on, but it is something we will do before mainnet.
Okay, I'm slightly confused there. So if you've decided that you've got 2 competing chains and one of them is the wrong chain, so you reorganize to what you consider to be the correct chain, why would you want to keep any data from the incorrect chain?
Because with Meros, our blockchain doesn't have that much data on it. We have a transactions DAG, and that transactions DAG is actions. And then we have what we call the consensus DAG, and we've modified it heavily over the months we've worked on Meros, and that stores verifications and so on. But all the blockchain really stores is metadata. It just stores a record of what verifications exist. And yes, technically it does store those verifications, but those verifications aren't locked into a block, despite they can be used on an alternate chain if they're just resubmitted, which is perfectly valid and secure, and it actually needs to be done for complete security.
Right.
So the discussion isn't that the data in the blocks are invalid, it's that the blocks themselves aren't the blocks we want to use. So the question is, how do we carry over the valid data and not lose it?
Okay. So that's not really as straightforward as a regular Bitcoin. Would something like that happen in Bitcoin, where you would have something like a chain reorg and decide that you still wanted to keep some of the old data?
In Bitcoin, blocks store transactions. So when a chain reorganization happens, all the transactions that were in reorganized blocks should be added back to the mempool, which is the cache of transactions which have yet to be placed in a block. And then as it syncs up the new chain that it wants to switch over to, it would remove the transactions from the memory pool if they were either A, included on the new chain, or B, invalidated by the new chain. And then when it finishes syncing the new chain, if there's some transactions that are still valid and weren't included, then they would try to get them into the next block.
Right. And that's why I've been confused. Okay, right. Thank you for clarifying that, Kayaba. Thank you very much. The next big deal that's been a big newsworthy item within Meros over the last month or so is developer testnet 4, also known as DT4. Now there's also DT4S, but which I'll speak about that after. So developer testnet 4, we've spoken about the previous developer testnets and you've explained what they were for. So what was the purpose behind developer testnet 4? How did the testnet go overall? Are you happy with what you found out? And yeah, just explain to me a little bit about the testnet.
So developer testnet 4, I really had 2 targets with it, beyond the general overall, does Meros work? I really wanted to focus on 2 more things. So the 2 things I really want to focus on are, 1, the newly implemented chain reorganizations. And beyond chain reorganizations, I also wanted to focus on... Sorry, I just need a second to gather my thoughts here. Beyond chain reorganizations, I really wanted to focus on sending Meros. Sending Meros is something I've tested privately, and it's something that technically has been testable on all these existing networks. But it's never something we really got around to thoroughly testing for whatever reason. Generally because the network had stability problems, which would cause the network to fragment, and that means you can't really test sending Meros. So because of that, what we focus on is A, chain reorganizations, which means the network won't fragment. If the network disagrees about what the latest block is, it will resolve that. And B, we fixed a crash or two that we had discovered while working on developer testnet 3. So thanks to fixing these stability issues, along with implementing chain reorgs, the focuses were really on testing A, stability, and B, just sending some Meros around.
Okay, and how did the network how did the testnet go? Did it work out as you had predicted?
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to say no to that one. While we did fix the crashes, we didn't fix the stability issues. The nodes weren't crashing, but eventually they did effectively stop handling network data for a reason we did know, and I just didn't think it would act up so badly. But because it acted up to such a point, the network wasn't stable, and I had to cancel it while we continue working on the stability of it.
Okay, that leads me beautifully into my next question, which is an open issue, open on the 22nd of March, 2020. The issue is that Meros network activity eventually hangs. Now, I'm quite sure I'm right in saying that was the reason why we ended up cancelling, you ended up cancelling Testnet 4, because I don't think I was a part of that decision. Well, you ended up cancelling developer Testnet 4. What was the reason for this problem, and how do you think you can fix something like the network activity hanging? Because this is obviously a critical bug.
It started out at the fact that Meros was just rejecting peers after about 500. It was just silently ignoring them. And then we figured out that the reason it was silently ignoring them was thanks to something in the OS called ulimit. When you work with Linux servers and Mac as well, there's a program called ulimit that says if a program's accessing too many files, don't allow it to access more. Kind of set off a cutoff point saying, hey, you already have this many files open. We're not going to let you have any more open. And because of ulimit, it was stopping us from creating more peers. But eventually the problem became that we left files open. So we would open a file, but then we wouldn't close it. So eventually, ulimit would trigger even if we only had 5 peers, because there were hundreds of dead peers floating around in a state of limbo. So the issue is just focusing on making sure that our file accesses are proper, that we only open files when they're needed, and we make sure we close them when we're done with them.
When you say there are 500 peers, Meros will not accept more than 500 clients. Were there 500 clients testing the developer testnet? Is that because each developer sets up a certain amount of nodes, or how does that work in practical terms?
Because we were leaving the files open, it was actually just 500 overall.
Right.
So over time, and nodes will frequently reconnect.
Right.
For a different reason that we've actually accepted. But we do mean to fix as it's an optimization to make.
And do you have an idea on how you're going to fix that? And is it a major worry for Meros moving forward? There's quite a lot of actual... I've got to make sure that I put this link in the description. There's quite a lot of information in the GitHub about what you think is going to happen. I'm not going to expect you to go through all of what you've actually typed up in the code base, but could you just kind of summarize what you feel at this point will be the best way to sort out this issue?
Really, it's truly just detecting when we open a file and fail the utilities we can do to do that. So we really just have to go through our code base and look for them.
Okay, awesome. Right, my next question is, as you just alluded to, well, you did say the word optimization. I do love an optimization. It's always something that us end users and mere mortals who are non-developers like to hear. We like to know things are going to work faster, quicker, more secure. Random X cache generation can be done before it's needed to ensure a smoother transition. Now, this was opened as an issue, but I guess it's not really an issue. Could it be classed as a feature request? What does it actually mean, this random X cache generation? And how much of a difference would it make to the end user once Meros is up and running?
This podcast has been brought to you by Rhubarb Media.
Right.
Rhubarb Media are the branding specialists behind successful crypto projects such as PivX, Vendible, and Libertaria. The Rhubarb style is both loved and respected the world over. So if you want your project to appeal to techies and everyday users alike, give Rhubarb Media a try. You cannot possibly be disappointed. Link is in the description.
Right, so we have it listed as an optimization. Basically, we need to regenerate the random X virtual machine. Random X is our hash algorithm. It's a hash that involves a virtual machine. It's not a traditional virtual machine, as in it doesn't run Windows, it doesn't run Linux, but it still simulates a computer, a mini computer. And part of random X is you do have to recreate it every once in a while. So recreating it takes anywhere from a few seconds to 10 seconds. It really just depends on how fast your computer is. And because of the way we currently do it, that stops Meros from doing anything for 5 to 10 seconds. So the comment is we can do it on a thread before we need it. So it's kind of generated in the background and ready when we need it.
Right.
So it's just an optimization to ensure smoother node activity without a pause.
Right.
Every once in a while.
Right. But albeit the pause would only be for 5 seconds anyway. So it'd be almost unnoticeable anyway. It's not as if it would be a major headache. It
would really be more noticed by system admins, or if Meros ever achieved a high amount of transactions, because for a moment they would slow down across the entire network. But so it definitely is something worth doing, but it isn't outrageously bad.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for clarifying that. It would be pretty unique for there to be any kind of content, podcast or otherwise, without mentioning what the world is going through at the moment with the coronavirus. Coronavirus is kind of impacting everybody's way of life, but as a software developer and as the lead developer on Meros, how much of an impact has the coronavirus pandemic had on the development of Meros during this past month? Has it been possibly a help in the fact that you are being asked now to stay indoors, which gives you more time to code? Or have you found the community and the growing Meros team, have you handled this ongoing pandemic, and has it been an issue for you guys?
So I would never call it a help. I already spent a decent amount of time indoors, and I'm still doing most of my daily activities. I'm not like trying to go out to a movie theater or a restaurant, but I'm still popping out to get a soda, making sure I'm safe. All I do is washing my hands and so on. But I actually have some family members who are immunocompromised and therefore subject to extra risk during these times. So I haven't been personally helped, and I'm sure there's other people in similar situations who are going through the same kind of stress and worry, and that doesn't help them either. But when it comes to Meros professionally, all of our team is remote, and we're not trying to manufacture anything or ship any physical products. So professionally, we haven't been that impacted. It's been more of a personal, emotional thing.
Yeah. During this pandemic, some people have spoken about where blockchain fits in. I guess this is not really to do with Meros, but it is sometimes interesting to get your view on that, with the government having decided in the US, let's just say, for example, where you guys are, the figure is something like 2 trillion. Now, do you feel in the long run that those sorts of actions by central government galvanize you to work on projects like Meros, which deliver more financial freedom to people?
So I don't really like talking about politics while I'm in the Meros. Me in different arenas, I'm sure you can find my political views. It's not like I exceptionally hide them. When it comes to the bailout, relief effort, coronavirus bill, whatever you want to call it, when it comes to the one that our Congress, or at least one house of it, has recently passed, I don't have that much of an opinion. I have my personal beliefs on prioritization of business and prioritization of people. But beyond that, it's kind of life as always. I do feel situations like this highlight the value of cryptocurrency. But I also feel the fact that cryptocurrency price has plummeted as it has demonstrates that the majority of people aren't in cryptocurrency for the belief, they're in it for the money, which is distressing. I feel for cryptocurrency to be succeeding, not just in theory, but with its community, the price would have to go up, as that would demonstrate, it's an untouchable value. It's not going to be affected by the USD. And of course, while the USD does affect it, it's a major currency, these actions will devalue the USD. So Bitcoin should go up in relation. It shouldn't go down 25%. So while it does highlight the benefits of cryptocurrency, it says a lot about the community. Unfortunate.
Yeah. Yes, interesting. And it's good to see that whilst you've got your Meros head on, you're staying as politically neutral as possible, which is probably bodes well for the project.
Random word generator for President 2020.
I would like to ask you about a concept that a lot of people are familiar within software development, which it says that this particular concept says that 10% of development usually takes, or the last 10% of development usually takes 90% of the overall development time. Now, do you agree with this broad statement? And do you feel that Meros is within that final 10% stage?
That's not a statement I personally agree with, just because of how exaggerated. Though I do understand the sentiment and agree with it on a reduced scale, such as the last 10% may take 20% or 30% of the time.
Yeah.
I think it's all about how you define the last 10%, because obviously 10% actually takes 10. But it's probably the last 10% of features plus all the bug fixes or what take 30% of the time, just because bugs are extensive, and even if you fix bugs along the way, there's going to be a queue that remain until after you finish all the features, and then you have to get to them. So if you count the last 10% as the last 10% of features plus the accumulated bugs that you have yet to fix, then sure, that definitely takes around 30% of the time. And I think Meros probably is in that last 10% of features.
Excellent. How confident are you that Meros, or how, maybe not confident, but how pleased are you with the progress that Meros has made, let's say within the last 3 months? Are you satisfied with I guess the testnets that you've released and how they've come along, and the new progress within the community and new people stepping up and stepping forward? Are you happy with the way that Meros is developing? Do you feel satisfied with the progress at the moment?
Meros development has taken a while overall, which isn't something I'm happy with. Voiced these concerns before. That said, I am happy with how it's been recently, even if I'm not happy with the work we've discovered recently. I do feel like we're moving along at a steady rate, and I feel like we're slowly going to be moving faster in the future. We just have to keep moving.
Yes, wise words. Right, final question, last question, and it is by no means least, last but by no means least, MIP-0001. Now, every time we have a podcast and I share with you our show notes before we start recording, you always let me know that I've abbreviated MIP1, as I always do, wrong. So MIP-0001. How much progress have you made to this being the original or the maiden Meros improvement proposal? How much progress has been made, and where does MIP-0001 stand at the moment?
So recently I did quote unquote finish the proposal. It's still a draft right now as I'm waiting for comment, but to be honest, I believe more people are going to ask questions than leave commentary. So because of that, I don't see any more edits being made to it, which means even though it's still technically a draft, I do see it being finalized within the next few days. And then once finalized, it still has to be accepted into the Meros protocol, but there's currently nothing blocking it. So when it will be accepted, it will be coded into Meros.
Could you summarize what Meros Improvement Proposal 1 is? Could you summarize it?
Sure. So what it is the Meros Development Fund. Instead of the pre-mine that we were planning, it creates a decentralized long-term funding solution where our community can vote for who they believe Meros should go to. And then over the course of months, every week, a small amount will be paid out instead of the lump sums the pre-mine was discussing.
Where did you get the idea for this type of development fund? Is it already live within the crypto sphere? Are there any projects that are already using this particular type of funding model or something similar where you've gained inspiration?
So there are a lot of DAOs out there, decentralized autonomous organizations, and there are a lot used to fund people who contribute to the project. That said, I hate every single one of them. I'm not a fan of Dash's model. PivX just ripped off Dash's model and didn't continue with the updates. I'm not a fan of all of them. So with a lot of the DAOs out there, I believe they're too political. People are always quarreling about proposals, and since it's every month, there's constantly a new slew of arguments going on. And I understand you can't remove politics from the DAO, not completely. But with Meros, we looked for a longer-term solution. So you only get to vote every 6 months, which means people are going to think more about the proposals, which means there's going to be fewer proposals to discuss, which means we're going to see more serious proposals. That said, these proposals can also be to what we call lockboxes, decentralized on-chain scripts, which means you can set up your own rules for how to distribute the funds and create a sort of sub-fund. You can create a script that says, these 5 people decide, or this collection of people vote. You don't have to, you can extend it, is my point.
Yeah.
So that does offer more rapid action and month-to-month abilities. It just doesn't convolute the official Meros protocol with it.
Interesting. I guess that opens the door for a whole host of ways to divide up these funds. As many as you could think to program within a script. So I'm just literally thinking aloud here, but could you have something like, I guess, like a random representation whereby you have a random 5 people get to decide a particular small fund, and those random people are literally picked at random from a certain pool, and if they don't respond within a certain time, then it moves on to other, I guess, address holders. Would that be possible?
Sort of. I'm trying to think it through in my head now. You can write a script that gets the time and uses the time to generate a hash. And then you can have, like, the odds of it are, like the odds of the hash matching a certain group of people are 1 in 5, Yeah. And it's just the first 5 who meet the hash in whatever way. Of course, you're not going to be looking for the key to meet the exact hash.
Yeah.
But yes, there's certain things you can do to do that. But when we discuss complex behavior, we're really looking more for smart contracts,
right,
which is something Meros doesn't have. Despite Meros having an on-chain scripting system, we purposely didn't extend it to smart contracts because of the bloat and security issues those can raise.
Yeah. You see, this is why I really enjoy speaking to you, because I can bounce my half-baked, wild ideas, some would call them schemes, off of your mighty intellect and usually get a coherent answer. Kayaba, we have run out of time. We have exhausted our time for this month's episode. I would like to thank you, as I do every month, from the bottom of my heart, for providing so much transparency. I did not get to mention, actually, that this week, I guess it'll be last week by the time this airs, you also released the Medium edition of the update, which is a text-based update on the Medium platform. So I always link to that in the description. So please, if you do like to digest information, I'm talking to the listeners now, if you do like to digest information via text, please give it a read, because it is very, very interesting. And there are some parts in there, like with regards to the testnet, that go into slightly more detail than we have done here. So it's well worth a read. Also, please do join the Discord and have a look at the Meros improvement proposal and comment. These things are welcome. But Kayaba, is there anything else you'd like to add before we sign off?
Just that it was great to be here, and I'm excited to see.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Kayaba, thank you again so much for your time. For all the people listening, congratulations, you have made it to the end. Please, please, please like and subscribe. It would help us out a lot. And share this podcast on all platforms. There are so many crypto projects out there. Well, I don't want to badmouth them, but there are quite a few crypto projects out there that don't have this level of transparency, where you do get to speak to the developers every single month and you can ask them all the questions that you would like answered. So please share this and we can start spreading the news about Meros and getting more people interested in this this innovative project. So Kayaba, thank you very much. For everyone who's listening, also thank you very much, and we will see you again with the May update. So I've been Cryptosi and you've all been great. Thank you so much and goodbye.
This show is brought to you by PivX, private instant verified transactions. With its groundbreaking zero coin staking and masternodes, PivX is the top privacy currency. Feel free to trade some on Binance or Bittrex. And for more information, go to www.pivex.org.